After her millionaire CEO husband divorced her, she refused to leave. He called her father and said, "Come take your good-for-nothing daughter away from my house." Sign them, Victoria. Stop being difficult. I designed this house. Every wall, every window, every beam. I poured my soul into creating our home. My home. The deed is in my name. You were just playing architect while I built an empire. Playing? I sacrificed my own firm to design your properties. And I'm grateful. But gratitude doesn't make you suitable to be Mrs. Damien Cross. Vanessa comes from the Rothmore family. Her connections will secure the international contracts I need. What do you bring to the table? Sketches and sentiment? I brought you love. Love doesn't close deals, Victoria. Then why haven't I left? You've been asking me to sign for 2 weeks. Why am I still here? Because you're stubborn. Pride. The same impractical emotions that make you unsuitable. No, I'm still here because you're making a mistake, and somewhere deep down you know it. The only mistake I made was marrying someone so far beneath my social standing. My mother was right. I should have married someone from our world. And that is when Damien Cross pulled out his phone and made the call that would destroy her completely. Gerald? Yes, it's Damien Cross. I need you to do something for me. Come collect your daughter. She seems to have forgotten that this marriage is over. Perhaps you can talk some sense into your good-for-nothing daughter since I've failed to do so. Have you ever poured your soul into something, a relationship, a dream, a life, only to be told you weren't good enough? Have you ever been called worthless by the one person who was supposed to see your value? Victoria Ashford was about to experience the most humiliating moment of her life. Her millionaire CEO husband was divorcing her for a woman with better connections. But when she refused to leave the house she built with her own hands, Damien made a call that would shatter her completely. What happened next would either destroy her forever or forge her into something unstoppable. Stay with me, because this story gets absolutely wild. Before we dive in, if you love stories about people who refuse to stay, broken, who build empires from ashes, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. And drop a comment telling me, would you have signed those papers? Let me know. Now let's get into it. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse like accusations, each drop a reminder of promises broken. Victoria stood in the living room she had designed herself, her hands trembling as she clutched. The divorce papers that would erase 3 years of marriage in a single signature. The space around her was a testament to her talent. Soaring ceilings with reclaimed wood beams, floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the city's skyline. An open concept layout that made 8,000 square feet feel intimate rather than cavernous. She had designed this penthouse to be filled with laughter and life and children's voices. Instead, it had become a museum of everything she had sacrificed. Damien stood by the bar, pouring himself scotch as if this were just another business transaction. Perhaps to him, it was. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, his dark hair perfectly styled, his blue eyes cold and calculated. This was the man she had fallen in love with 4 years ago. The man who had once looked at her like she hung the moon. Now he looked at her like she was an inconvenience to be managed. You know what I mean. You're talented, I'll give you that. But talent doesn't make you suitable to be Mrs. Damien Cross. He set down his glass with deliberate precision. The sound echoed in the cavernous space. Vanessa comes from the Rothmore family. Her connections alone will secure the international contracts I need. What do you bring to the table? Sketches and sentiment? Victoria felt something inside her crack, but she refused to let it shatter completely. I brought you love. Damien laughed. The sound was hollow in the space Victoria had designed to be filled with warmth. Love. Love doesn't close deals. Love doesn't expand into the European market. Vanessa understands what I need to succeed. Then why haven't I left? Victoria asked, lifting her chin. She moved toward him, her bare feet silent on the heated marble floors she had personally selected. You've been asking me to sign for 2 weeks. You've had your lawyers send threatening letters. Why am I still here? Damien's jaw tightened. It was the only crack in his composed exterior. Stubbornness, pride, the same impractical emotions that make you unsuitable. No. Victoria moved to the window, placing her palm against the cold glass. Beyond it, the city sprawled like a circuit board of lights and possibilities. Somewhere out there was the woman she used to be, before she had made herself small to fit into Damien's world. I'm still here because you're making a mistake, and somewhere deep down you know it. The only mistake I made was marrying someone so far beneath my social standing. The words were designed to wound, and they succeeded. Victoria felt them like physical blows. My mother was right. I should have married someone from our world, your world. Victoria turned to face him. I've lived in your world for 3 years, Damien. I've attended your galas, charmed your investors, designed buildings that made you millions. I've been the perfect wife except for one unforgivable sin. I loved you for who you are, not what you could give me. How noble. His tone dripped with sarcasm. That nobility won't matter when security escorts you out tomorrow morning. You wouldn't. Watch me. Damien pulled out his phone, and Victoria's stomach dropped as she heard him dial. She knew that look, that cold determination that meant he had made a decision and nothing would change his mind. But she wasn't prepared for what came next. She couldn't have been. Gerald? Yes, it's Damien Cross. I need you to do something for me. Victoria's blood ran cold. Gerald Ashford was her father, a man she hadn't spoken to in 5 years, not since he had gambled away her mother's inheritance and disappeared into a bottle, not since the night he had raised his hand to her and she had finally found the courage to leave. Damien knew this. He knew exactly how much this would hurt. He knew about the scars, both visible and invisible, that her father had left. And he was calling him anyway. Don't you dare. Victoria started forward, but Damien held up a hand. His eyes locked on her face, watching for her reaction like a scientist observing an experiment. Come collect your daughter. She seems to have forgotten that this marriage is over. Perhaps you can talk some sense into your good-for-nothing daughter since I've failed to do so. The words good for nothing hung in the air like poison. Victoria felt the room tilt. Those were the exact words her father had used. The exact phrase that had haunted her nightmares for years. And now Damien, the man she had trusted with her heart, was weaponizing her trauma against her. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. I trust you remember the address of the penthouse your daughter designed but doesn't own. He ended the call with surgical precision. Then he looked at Victoria with something that might have been satisfaction. You bastard. The word came out as a whisper. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks, hot against her cold skin. After everything, you'd humiliate me like this? I'm being merciful. I could have security throw you out tonight. Instead, I'm giving you until morning to pack your things and leave with whatever dignity you have left. Damien moved toward the master bedroom. Their bedroom, though it hadn't felt like theirs in months. Vanessa moves in on Friday. I'd prefer not to have to explain why my ex-wife is still lingering in my home. Victoria stood alone in the living room as rain continued its assault on the windows. She looked at the divorce papers on the coffee table she had commissioned from a local artisan, at the throw pillows she had selected to add warmth to the leather sofa, at the art on the walls that she had chosen to make this space feel like a home rather than a showroom. Every detail in this penthouse bore her fingerprints, her vision, her soul, and now it was being stripped away like everything else. She could sign. She could leave. She could let Damien marry his socially appropriate Vanessa and pretend the past 3 years had been a dream, a nightmare, or she could refuse. One more night, one more chance to make him see what he was destroying. But as she heard Damien's bedroom door close with finality, Victoria realized something that made her hand steady as she picked up the pen. She wasn't fighting for him anymore. She was fighting for herself, for the woman who had sacrificed her dreams, for the architect who had forgotten how to build her own future, for the girl who had survived her father's cruelty only to walk straight into a different kind of abuse. She signed the papers with swift, certain strokes. Her signature was steady, elegant, final. Then she walked to her design studio, the one room Damien never entered, and she began to plan. Not for tomorrow. Not for the humiliation that awaited when her alcoholic father showed up to drag her away. She began to plan for after, for the life she would build from the ashes of this marriage, for the empire she would create from the rage crystallizing in her chest. The sun rose over the city like an accusation. Victoria hadn't slept. She had spent the night in her studio, surrounded by blueprints and sketches, and models of buildings that existed only in her imagination. She had designed properties worth hundreds of millions for Damien's company. She had made his vision reality while her own dreams grew smaller and smaller. No more. At 9:45, she heard movement in the living room. Security, probably, making sure she didn't steal anything on her way out, as if she would want any of it. as if anything in this penthouse held value beyond the bitter memories. At 9:58, the doorbell rang. Victoria took a deep breath and walked out of her studio. Damien stood near the entrance, still in his pajamas and robe, holding a cup of coffee. He looked well rested, refreshed, like he hadn't just destroyed someone's life. The door opened. Gerald Ashford stumbled in, and Victoria's stomach turned. He looked worse than she remembered. His face was bloated and red, broken capillaries mapping his nose and cheeks. His hands trembled. His clothes were wrinkled and stained, and his eyes, when they found her, held nothing but resentment. There she is, the disappointment. His words were slurred. Of course they were. It was 10 in the morning. He was always drunk by 10, causing trouble for successful men, just like your mother. Mr. Ashford, thank you for coming. Damien's voice was smooth, professional, as if he were conducting a business meeting rather than orchestrating Victoria's humiliation. I apologize for the inconvenience, but Victoria has been reluctant to accept that our marriage is over. I thought perhaps family could help her see reason. Family. Gerald laughed. The sound was ugly. I haven't been her family in years. She walked out on me. Abandoned me when I needed her most. Ungrateful, just like her mother. He moved toward Victoria, and she instinctively stepped back. The smell of whiskey and cigarettes preceded him like a warning. But I suppose even a disappointment is still my responsibility. What's it worth to you, Cross? Having me take her off your hands? Victoria's face burned with shame. Her father was trying to negotiate, trying to get money for collecting her like she was garbage to be disposed of. I don't think that will be necessary. Damien's voice held a note of disgust. At least he had the decency to be repulsed by Gerald's mercenary approach. I simply need you to ensure Victoria leaves the premises and understands that she has no claim to this property or any of my assets beyond what's outlined in the divorce settlement. How much is the settlement? Gerald's eyes gleamed with calculation. That's between Victoria and her lawyer. So, there is money. Gerald turned to Victoria with something ugly in his expression. Always knew you'd be good for something eventually. Marrying rich and cashing out. Smarter than I gave you credit for. Get out. Victoria's voice was quiet but firm. Both of you. I'll leave. I signed the papers, but I won't stand here and be discussed like property by two men who never saw me as anything more than a disappointment or an accessory. She walked to the door with her head high. She had already moved her essential items to a storage unit over the past 2 weeks. Clothes, personal documents, her laptop, and design equipment. The things that actually mattered. Everything else, all the designer furniture and art and luxury items Damien had filled their lives with, could stay. She didn't want any of it. Security will escort you out. Damien's voice followed her. Cold, final, as if they hadn't spent 3 years building a life together. As if she hadn't loved him with everything she had. Victoria walked past security, past the doorman who wouldn't meet her, eyes, past the lobby she had redesigned when they had first moved in, out into the Seattle morning where rain had given way to gray skies. Her father stumbled after her, still trying to negotiate something, anything from the situation. She ignored him, kept walking, one foot in front of the other, away from the penthouse, away from Damien Cross, away from the woman she had been. She made it 3 blocks before the tears came. She ducked into a coffee shop, ordered something she didn't taste, and sat in the back corner with her phone. The divorce settlement was already in her account, $250,000. Less than she deserved for 3 years of her life and career sacrifice. More than her pride wanted to accept. But she would take it. She would take it, and she would build something. She would prove that she was never the problem. The hotel room was cheap and impersonal. Beige walls, floral bedspread, the smell of industrial cleaning products. Victoria sat on the edge of the bed with the signed divorce papers in her lap and tried to figure out how her life had collapsed so completely. 24 hours ago, she had been Mrs. Damien Cross, living in a penthouse, married to a millionaire. Now she was alone in a hotel that charged by the week, with no home, no husband, and a father who saw her as a potential payday. She stared at her reflection in the mirror above the dresser. Dark circles under her eyes, hair that needed washing, clothes wrinkled from not sleeping. She looked destroyed, broken, everything Damien had said she was. Unsuitable, not good enough, good for nothing. The rage started as a flicker, a small flame in her chest. And then it grew. It grew into something white hot and cleansing. She was furious at Damien for throwing her away, furious at herself for becoming small to fit in his world, furious at her father for being exactly who she knew he was, furious at every person who had ever implied she should be grateful to be Mrs. Damien Cross. And that fury, that crystallized rage, it became fuel. Victoria stood up. She washed her face. She made a list. First, she needed a real place to live, not this hotel, somewhere she could work, somewhere she could plan. Second, she needed clients. The divorce settlement would fund the initial launch of her firm, but she needed projects. Third, she needed to rebuild her reputation as an architect, not as Damien Cross's ex-wife. Fourth, she needed to become so successful, so undeniable, that every person who had dismissed her would choke on their assumptions. She opened her laptop and started designing, not a building, a plan, a strategy, a future. If Damien thought she was just sketches and sentiment, she would show him what she could build when she was designing for herself instead of making his vision reality. She would show everyone. Before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated? Dismissed? Called not good enough? Hit that like button if you've ever had to prove someone wrong. And stick around because Victoria is about to build something that will make Damien choke on his words. This is where it gets good. 6 months after the divorce, Victoria was living in her mother's old apartment in the Belltown neighborhood. It was small, outdated, with plumbing that groaned and neighbors who fought loud enough to hear through the walls. But it was hers. Or at least, it was her workspace. She had converted the second bedroom into a design studio, covering the walls with sketches and blueprints and material samples. Her first clients were small, a couple wanting to renovate their kitchen, a small business owner who needed to redesign their retail space for better flow, projects that paid enough to cover rent and food, and the slowly growing mountain of supplies she needed. She worked 18-hour days, sketching until her hand cramped, researching sustainable materials and innovative structural solutions, teaching herself the business side of running a firm because she could no longer rely on Damien's infrastructure to handle contracts and billing and client relations. Some nights she survived on ramen and coffee. Some mornings she woke up on her drafting table because she had worked until she collapsed. And always she was building, not just buildings, herself, her confidence, her reputation, her future. The breakthrough came 14 months after the divorce. A local nonprofit was looking for an architect to design a community center in one of Seattle's underserved neighborhoods. They had a limited budget, a tight timeline, and a vision for something that would serve multiple purposes: meeting space, after-school programs, community gardens, performance areas. They needed someone brilliant enough to maximize limited space and cheap enough to fit their budget. Victoria pitched them a design that incorporated sustainable materials, natural, light, and flexible spaces that could be reconfigured for different uses. She showed them how green roofs could provide garden space while reducing heating and cooling costs, how large windows and solar tubes could reduce electricity needs, how community members could be involved in the building process, reducing labor costs while increasing investment in the finished space. They hired her on the spot. The Rainier Community Center opened 18 months later, and it was everything Victoria had promised. Beautiful, functional, sustainable, a space that served the neighborhood's needs while pushing the boundaries of what affordable architecture could be. It won a regional award for sustainable design. Architecture blogs started featuring it. Other nonprofits reached out, wanting to know if she could do something similar for their communities. Suddenly, Victoria Ashford wasn't Damien Cross's ex-wife. She was the architect who designed that incredible community center, the one who proved that sustainable design didn't have to be expensive or ugly, the one who actually listened to clients and created spaces that served real needs rather than just looking impressive in photos. By year 2, her firm had grown. She hired 2 junior architects and an administrative assistant. They moved out of her mother's apartment and into a small office space in Pioneer Square. Not fancy, but professional, real. By year 3, she was competing for mid-level commercial projects, office buildings, mixed-use developments, residential complexes, and she was winning. Not every pitch, but enough to pay her team well, enough to save money, enough to invest in better equipment and more ambitious designs. And all the while, she watched Damien's career from a distance. He had married Vanessa Rothmore in a wedding that made the society pages. Lavish, expensive, perfectly orchestrated. They looked happy in the photos. The perfect power couple. Everything Damien had said he needed. But Victoria noticed things. The way Vanessa's smile never reached her eyes. The way Damien looked stiff in photos, like he was playing a role. The way the business publications talked about his company's expansion, but also hinted at internal struggles. She told herself she didn't care, that she was too busy building her own empire to worry about her ex-husband's marriage. But late at night, when she was alone in her apartment, she sometimes wondered if he ever thought about her, if he ever regretted what he had thrown away, if he ever drove past the penthouse she had designed and remembered the woman who had loved him before he had chosen status over substance. By year 4, Victoria had her signature project. A tech startup wanted a headquarters that reflected their values: innovation, sustainability, employee well-being. They had a generous budget and a CEO who trusted architects to do what they did best. Victoria designed a building that incorporated biophilic design principles: living walls, natural materials, spaces that blurred the line between inside and outside, collaborative areas balanced with quiet zones, a rooftop garden that provided food for the employee cafeteria, and a peaceful retreat during lunch breaks. The Cascadia Tech building opened to rave reviews. It was featured in Architectural Digest, Dwell, and Metropolis magazine. It won awards for sustainable design, innovative workspace solutions, and aesthetic excellence. And most importantly, the employees loved it. Productivity increased. Retention improved. Other companies started asking if Victoria could design something similar for them. At 34 years old, 5 years after her divorce, Victoria Ashford was one of the most sought-after architects in the Pacific Northwest, and she was just getting started. Her masterpiece was still ahead. The Meridian Arts Complex started as a conversation with the director of a local arts foundation. They had acquired a full city block in a transitional neighborhood. They wanted to create a space that would house galleries, performance venues, artist studios, and community classrooms. They wanted it to be beautiful but not pretentious, accessible but not cheap. A place that would anchor the neighborhood's revitalization while serving artists and the community. It was exactly the kind of challenge Victoria loved. She spent 6 months on the design, studying how light moved through the space at different times of day and year, researching materials that would be durable and sustainable, consulting with artists about what they actually needed rather than imposing her vision on them. The final design was ambitious, a soaring structure of glass and reclaimed materials that seemed to breathe with life, spaces that flowed into each other while maintaining distinct identities, natural light everywhere, reducing energy costs while showcasing art in the way it was meant to be seen. The construction took 2 years. There were challenges, budget constraints, supply chain issues, the usual conflicts between vision and reality, but Victoria had learned how to navigate these problems, how to find creative solutions, how to protect the integrity of her design while being flexible about the details. The Meridian Arts Complex opened on a rainy Saturday in October, exactly 5 years after Damien had called her father to drag her out of their penthouse. The opening was everything Victoria had dreamed. Artists showcasing their work, musicians performing in acoustically perfect spaces, families exploring interactive exhibits, community members taking classes, and, everywhere, people marveling at the building itself. The way light poured through the central atrium, the way the structure seemed to invite you deeper, the way it felt alive. Within weeks, the Meridian became Seattle's newest landmark. Architecture critics called it transcendent, a masterpiece, the kind of building that defined a career. It won every major architecture award: the AIA Honor Award, the Cote Top 10 Award for Sustainable Design, international recognition from organizations Victoria had only dreamed of impressing. Architectural Digest ran a cover story, The Phoenix, How Victoria Ashford Rose from Ashes to Build an Empire. The article detailed her journey: the divorce, the struggle, the determination, the slow, steady climb to the top of her profession. It talked about her design philosophy, creating spaces that served human needs rather than just making architectural statements. It interviewed her clients, who praised her ability to listen and translate their visions into reality. It positioned her as one of the most important architects of her generation. The magazine hit stands on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, Victoria's phone was ringing non-stop. International clients, major developers, universities wanting her to design new buildings. Everyone wanted the architect who had created the Meridian. Everyone wanted a piece of her vision. Victoria sat in her corner office, looking out at the Seattle skyline, at the buildings she had helped shape, and felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Pride, not the defensive pride of proving someone wrong, but genuine satisfaction in what she had built. She had taken the rage from her humiliation and channeled it into something beautiful. She had vindicated herself, but she wasn't done yet. Cross International Properties was Damien's empire, the company he had built from his family's real estate investments into a development powerhouse. They specialized in luxury residential towers, high-end commercial spaces, and mixed-use developments in major cities. For years, they had been the dominant player in the Pacific Northwest. But recently, they had been losing contracts, losing them to Ashford Designs. It started small. A boutique hotel chose Victoria's firm over Cross International. Then a university selected her design for their new science building. Then a major developer picked her concept for a waterfront mixed-use project that Damien had been counting on. Industry insiders started talking. Ashford's designs had something Cross International's lacked: soul, creativity, a human-centered approach that made spaces feel alive rather than just expensive. Developers were realizing that Victoria's buildings didn't just win awards. They attracted tenants, they improved neighborhoods, they became destinations. And in a competitive market, that mattered more than a famous name. Victoria heard through industry connections that this bothered Damien immensely, that he had started attending the same conferences and networking events, trying to see what she was doing differently, that he had pushed his architects to incorporate more sustainable design elements and biophilic principles, that he was, essentially, trying to copy her approach. She found it deeply satisfying, not because she wanted him to fail, but because him copying her proved that she had been right all along, that her vision had value, that she was never the problem. Meanwhile, Damien's personal life was imploding. His marriage to Vanessa lasted exactly 18 months before the cracks became canyons. They had never loved each other. That was the problem. They had married for strategic reasons. Her connections, his money, their combined social status. But strategic marriages require at least mutual respect to survive, and they didn't even have that. Vanessa resented being treated like a networking tool. Damien resented her spending and her constant social obligations. They fought about everything: money, time, priorities, the fact that neither of them had wanted the marriage in the first place, but were too proud to admit the mistake. The divorce was finalized quietly. No scandal, no tabloid drama, just a mutual acknowledgement that they had made a mistake and were correcting it. Damien's mother was disappointed. The Rothmore connections had been valuable, but even she had to admit that the marriage had been a disaster. After the divorce, Damien threw himself into work. He expanded Cross International into new markets, pushed his team harder, demanded perfection. But something was missing. The buildings they created were technically excellent, profitable, but they lacked something he couldn't quite name, some quality that made Victoria's buildings special. He found himself driving past the penthouse sometimes, the one Victoria had designed. He had told everyone he sold it after the divorce, but that was a lie. He had kept it, empty, unchanged, a monument to his stupidity. Sometimes he would go inside and walk through the rooms she had created. Remember the woman who had lived there, the woman he had loved and destroyed because he was too afraid to fight for what mattered. The penthouse had been empty for 5 years, the most expensive storage unit in the city, a reminder of everything he had thrown away. And then, the Singapore project started falling apart. Cross International had secured a contract to build a landmark mixed-use tower in Singapore's financial district. It was supposed to be Damien's crowning achievement, his expansion into the Asian market, the building that would cement his company's international reputation. But the lead architect quit halfway through design development. Creative differences, the official statement said. Industry insiders knew the truth. The architect had realized Damien wanted something innovative and sustainable, but kept overruling design decisions to cut costs. The architect had walked rather than attached their name to a mediocre building. The replacement architect Damien hired was competent but uninspired. They produced a design that was technically sound but aesthetically boring. A glass box with expensive finishes, Nothing that would stand out in a city full of architectural marvels. The investors were unhappy. They had been promised something extraordinary, something that would attract premium tenants and international attention. What they got was ordinary. Damien pushed for revisions, but the design just got worse. Too many voices, too many conflicting priorities, no clear vision holding it together. Then the deadline started approaching. They needed to break ground in 90 days or face massive penalty fees. The investors were talking about pulling out entirely. Lawsuits were being threatened. Cross International was facing a $100 million disaster, and Damien couldn't figure out how to fix it. He sat in his office at 2 a.m, surrounded by mediocre renderings of a mediocre building, and felt the walls closing in. His company's reputation was on the line. His expansion into Asia would die before it started. Everything he had worked for was crumbling. And in that moment of desperate clarity, he knew exactly who could save him. He just wasn't sure she would take his call. Victoria was in her office reviewing blueprints for a university library when her assistant Marcus buzzed in with barely contained excitement. "Boss, you're not going to believe who's on line 3. If it's another magazine wanting an interview, tell them I'm booked until next quarter. It's Damien Cross." The mechanical pencil in Victoria's hand stopped moving. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in her presence in 5 years. Her team knew better than to mention him, even when his company made headlines, even when his marriage to Vanessa Rothmore had imploded spectacularly after 18 months. What does he want? He wouldn't say. Just that it's urgent and he needs to speak with you personally. Victoria's mind raced through possibilities. In the 5 years since their divorce, she had rebuilt herself completely. She had taken the settlement money, less than she deserved, but more than her pride wanted to accept, and launched Ashford Designs. Her firm now competed directly with Cross International Properties, often winning contracts Damien wanted. She had heard through industry connections that this bothered him immensely. Good. Tell Mr. Cross that Victoria Ashford doesn't take calls from people who once called her good for nothing. Marcus grinned, but before he could relay the message, Victoria's private line rang. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Victoria, don't hang up. Please." Damien's voice was different. Rougher, less polished. That last word stopped her finger from ending the call. Damien Cross didn't say please. "You have 30 seconds. I need your help." The admission clearly cost him. Cross International is in trouble. The Singapore project is collapsing. The investors are pulling out because the lead architect quit, and the design is a disaster. We're facing a $100 million lawsuit if we can't deliver something extraordinary in 60 days. And you thought of me. How flattering. You're the best. Everyone knows it. That Meridian complex, Victoria, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The way you incorporated natural light, the sustainable systems, the way it feels alive. He trailed off. I need that kind of vision. I need you. You needed Vanessa Rothmore and her family connections. How did that work out? A long pause. I deserved that. You deserve far worse than a sarcastic comment, Damien. You humiliated me. You called my father, my alcoholic, abusive father, and told him to collect his good-for-nothing daughter. Do you have any idea what that felt like? I know I was cruel. I know I destroyed something precious because I was too blind to see its value. His voice cracked slightly. But right now, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for your professional expertise. Name your price. Victoria looked out her window at the city's skyline, at the buildings bearing her, signature style, at the empire she had built from the ashes of her humiliation. I don't work for Cross International. Then I'll work for you. Make me the client. You run the project. I follow your lead. Complete creative control, triple your usual fee, and your name on the building. The Cross Ashford Tower. Despite herself, Victoria felt a flicker of interest. The Singapore project was legendary, a mixed-use tower that could reshape the city's skyline. She had seen the preliminary designs months ago and thought them uninspired, but with her vision, the structure could be something truly special. Why should I save you? Because you're not doing it for me. You're doing it because you can't resist the challenge, because you want to prove, one more time, that you're the most brilliant architect of our generation, because even though you hate me, and you should, you love the work too. Much to let a project that size fail when you could make it magnificent. He knew her too well. That was the problem. Send me the files. I'll review them and let you know in 48 hours. Victoria, thank you. Don't thank me yet. If I take this project, I'm not doing it to save your company. I'm doing it to prove what you were too stupid to see 5 years ago. That I was never the one who wasn't good enough for you. You were never good enough for me. She ended the call before he could respond. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Please tell me you're not actually considering working with that man. Victoria stared at the phone, her heart racing with something that felt dangerously like anticipation. I'm considering working on a landmark project that could define my career. Who the client is, that's irrelevant. But even as she said it, Victoria knew she was lying. Nothing about Damien Cross had ever been irrelevant to her, and that was exactly the problem. Okay, pause. Victoria is about to walk back into Damien's world, but this time, she holds all the power. Do you think she should forgive him? Or make him suffer? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're loving this story, share it with someone who needs to hear that comeback stories are real. Now, let's see what happens in Singapore. 3 weeks later, Victoria stood at the Singapore construction site, and it was even worse than she had imagined. The foundation work had already begun based on the previous architect's flawed design. Workers were arguing in 3 different languages. Contractors were waving incomplete plans. Timeline charts on the site office walls showed they were already 2 weeks behind schedule. And in the center of it all, Damien Cross looked more disheveled than she had ever seen him. His suit jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up, his usually perfect hair falling across his forehead. He was shouting into a phone in Mandarin, and Victoria was struck by how different. He looked from the cold, composed man who had handed her divorce papers. He looked human, fallible, desperate. When he saw her, relief flooded his features. You came. I said I would. Victoria set down her portfolio case and surveyed the site. The afternoon heat was oppressive. The humidity made her clothes stick to her skin. The smell of concrete and metal filled the air. Show me everything. And I mean everything. Budgets, timelines, contracts, the problems your previous architect created. For the next 6 hours, they worked side by side, the way they once had in the early days of their marriage, before social ambitions and family pressure had poisoned everything. Damien spread out plans and contracts and budget reports. Victoria tore through them with ruthless efficiency, making notes, asking pointed questions, identifying problems the previous architect had created or ignored. The structural engineer had concerns about wind loads at that height. Why weren't they addressed? Stephen said we'd handle it in the next phase. There is no next phase if the building falls down. We fix it now. That's going to add 3 weeks to the timeline. Then we find those 3 weeks somewhere else. I'm not putting my name on a building with structural flaws. By evening, Victoria had filled 3 notebooks with observations and sketches. She had identified 17 major issues with the existing design, from inefficient space planning to code violations to aesthetic choices that made no sense. The investors arrived at 7 for an emergency meeting. 6 men in expensive suits who looked at Victoria with skepticism barely concealed behind polite smiles. Miss Ashford, we appreciate you taking time to review our project. The lead investor, a Singaporean developer named Chen, spoke with formal courtesy. However, we're concerned about bringing in yet another architect at this late stage. We need solutions, not more delays. I understand your concern. Victoria connected her laptop to the projector and pulled up the renderings she had created over the past 3 weeks. What you need is a building that will become a Singapore landmark. What you currently have is a mediocre box that will be forgotten before the paint dries. She clicked through her presentation. The tower she had designed was breathtaking. A twisting structure that maximized views while reducing wind resistance. Sustainable systems integrated so seamlessly they enhanced rather than compromised the aesthetics. Public spaces at ground level that would activate the street. Sky gardens every 15 floors that would provide community space for tenants. A crown at the top that would catch light and make the building visible across the city. This is revolutionary. Chen leaned forward, studying the renderings. Miss Ashford, you've transformed this completely. The original design was, as you said, a box with windows. This is art. This is architecture, Victoria corrected. And it's going to cost an additional 20 million to do it right. The investors looked at each other. Damien held his breath. Victoria waited. She knew the design was extraordinary. The question was whether they had the vision to recognize it. Done, Damien said without hesitation. Whatever you need. The investors agreed. Contracts were modified. Timelines were adjusted. Suddenly, Victoria found herself committed to spending the next 60 days in Singapore, working alongside the man who had shattered her heart and called her worthless. As the investors left, Damien turned to her with something like wonder in his eyes. "That presentation was incredible. I'd forgotten how brilliant you are in front of clients." "You didn't forget. You never really saw it in the first place." Victoria began packing her materials. "Tomorrow we start at 6. I need to meet with the engineering team and review the sustainable systems integration." "Victoria, wait." Damien caught her arm gently, and she froze at the contact. Even through the fabric of her sleeve, she could feel the warmth of his hand. 5 years had passed, but her body still remembered. "Can we have dinner? Talk about something other than cantilevers and load-bearing walls?" "No, please. I know I don't deserve your time, but there are things I need to say." "Things you should have said 5 years ago?" Victoria pulled her arm free. "I'm here to build a tower, Damien. Nothing more. Whatever you think you need to say to absolve your guilt, keep it. Don't need your apologies or explanations. I need you to approve budgets and stay out of my way." She walked away before he could see how much his touch had affected her, before he could notice that her hands were shaking. This was going to be the longest 60 days of her life. Day 15 arrived with the oppressive heat that characterized Singapore in May. Victoria stood on the framework of the tower's 7th floor, hard hat firmly in place, reviewing the steel beam placement. The view stretched across the financial district, glass towers reaching toward a sky heavy with humidity. Below, workers moved like ants, each one part of the coordinated effort to bring her vision to life. "You're doing it wrong." Her voice cut through the construction noise. The contractor froze mid-instruction. Victoria strode across the framework, pointing at the steel beam that was being lowered into place. "The load calculations require a 15-degree angle adjustment. Correct it now before we have a catastrophic failure 3 floors up." The contractor was a burly man named Chen, different from the investor, who had been working construction in Southeast Asia for 30 years. He intimidated most people, but he looked at Victoria's calculations, then at his own plans, and nodded meekly. "You're right. Adjust the angle 15 degrees. He barked orders to his crew in Cantonese. The beam was repositioned. Crisis averted. Victoria made a note on her tablet and moved to the next inspection point. From the site office window, Damien watched with a smile playing at his lips. Marcus, who had flown in to assist with project management, stood beside him reviewing budget reports. "Your ex-wife is terrifying. I'm half in love with her myself. She's always been like this," Damien murmured. "I just didn't appreciate it. I thought her passion was inconvenient, that her dedication to perfection was excessive." He shook his head. "I was an idiot." "Was?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. Before Damien could respond, Victoria appeared in the office doorway, blueprints tucked under her arm, a smudge of concrete dust on her cheek, her eyes blazing with the intensity she brought to every challenge. "We have a problem. The glass panels the supplier sent are wrong. Wrong tint, wrong thermal rating. They're trying to substitute inferior materials and hope we don't notice. I'll call them." "I already did. They're sending the correct panels, air freight, arriving tomorrow. It'll cost an extra 50,000. Done. Anything else?" Victoria studied him for a long moment. The afternoon light coming through the window caught the dust particles in the air, creating a halo effect around her. Damien thought she had never looked more beautiful. "You're agreeing very quickly." The old Damien would have argued about cost overruns. The old Damien was a fool who didn't recognize brilliance when it was sleeping beside him every night. The words escaped before he could stop them. The air between them electrified. Marcus suddenly became very interested in his laptop screen. Victoria's expression shifted through several emotions. Surprise, anger, something that might have been longing. Don't do this." "Don't do what?" "Tell the truth." "Victoria, working with you these past 2 weeks has reminded me of everything I lost. Watching you command this site, seeing your vision come to life." "Stop." She held up a hand. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to suddenly appreciate me now that I've become successful enough to save your company. Where was this admiration when I was designing your properties and you were treating me like an accessory? I know I failed you." "Failed me? You eviscerated me. You called me good for nothing. You brought my estranged father to our home to humiliate me. You threw away our marriage like it was a bad investment." Victoria's voice shook with controlled fury. "And now, because I'm winning awards and you need me, suddenly I'm brilliant? Suddenly I'm worth admiring? It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Damien? Explain to me how this is anything other than a powerful man finally noticing a woman when she's beyond his reach." Damien stood, moving around the desk, but keeping distance between them. "You want the truth? The absolute truth? I've always wanted that. I noticed you from the moment we met. I fell in love with you so fast it terrified me. You were brilliant and passionate, and you saw me, not my money or my name, but me. And that was intoxicating and terrifying because my whole life I'd been taught that love was a weakness, that marriage was a strategic alliance." He ran a hand through his hair. "So when my mother started pushing about Vanessa, about family connections and social standing, I convinced myself that logic was more important than love, that I could be happy with someone suitable. And how did that work out?" Victoria's voice was ice. "I was miserable every single day. Vanessa and I had nothing beyond social compatibility. She married me for my money. I married her for her connections, and we both realized within months that we'd made a catastrophic mistake." He took a step closer. "And every night, I'd drive past that penthouse, the one you designed, the one you should have been living in, and I'd remember what I'd destroyed. You sold that penthouse." "No. I told everyone I sold it. I couldn't bear to let anyone else live in the space you created. It's been empty for 5 years." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "That's the most expensive storage unit in the city. It's a monument to my stupidity. A very expensive reminder that I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too cowardly to fight for what mattered." Pretty words, Damien. But words are cheap. You taught me that. Then let me prove it with actions. 60 days on this project. Let me show you I've changed. And then what? We finish the tower and go back to our separate lives? You think some grand gesture will erase 5 years? No. But maybe it's a start. Damien's voice was raw with emotion. Maybe after 60 days you'll believe that the man who called you good for nothing was speaking. From fear and stupidity, and that the man standing here now finally understands what he lost. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. Damien saw something flicker in her dark eyes. Not forgiveness, but perhaps the smallest possibility of it. "Get back to work, Mr. Cross. We have a tower to build." As she left the office, Marcus whistled low. "That woman is going to make you work for every inch of ground you get back. Good. I deserve nothing less." The days blurred together in a rhythm of early mornings and late nights. Victoria arrived at the site at 6 every morning. Damien was always already there, 2 cups of coffee in hand, black with 2 sugars for her, exactly how she liked it. They would review the day's priorities, address any overnight issues, and coordinate with contractors across multiple time zones. By 7, the site was alive with activity. Workers welding steel, cranes lifting materials, engineers checking calculations, inspectors verifying code compliance. And through it all, Victoria moved with absolute authority. She caught errors before they became disasters. She solved problems that had contractors stumped. She pushed everyone, including herself, toward perfection. And Damien watched her with growing admiration and regret. This was who she had always been. Brilliant, dedicated, uncompromising in her pursuit of excellence. He had just been too blind to see it. Too threatened by a woman who didn't need him to be extraordinary. On day 23, they were reviewing interior finishes when Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her expression darkened. "I need to take this." She stepped outside the trailer. Damien tried not to eavesdrop, but her raised voice carried through the thin walls. "I don't care what he wants. Tell Gerald Ashford that I have nothing to say to him. No, he cannot have my new number, because the last time I saw him, he tried to shake down my ex-husband for money while I was being thrown out of my own home. Block the number." She came back inside, her face flushed with anger and something that looked like old pain. "Everything okay? My father found out I'm in Singapore. Probably saw something about the project online. He's trying to contact me. I'm sorry. That's my fault. If I hadn't called him that day. If you hadn't called him, I would have left that morning without the extra humiliation. But he is who he is. He's been trying to get money from me since my firm became successful. My assistant knows to block his calls, but he gets creative." Damien was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth, Calling him that day was the cruelest thing I've ever done, and I've regretted it every day since. Victoria looked at him with eyes that had seen too much pain. You wanted to hurt me. You succeeded. Can we get back to work now? They returned to finish samples, but the mood had shifted. The past wasn't as buried as either of them pretended. Day 37 brought the monsoon. It hit Singapore with biblical fury. Rain so heavy it turned the air white. The construction site shut down for safety. Workers evacuated to covered areas. Equipment was secured against wind that bent palm trees nearly horizontal. Victoria stood in the covered observation area, watching rain obliterate visibility, frustrated by the delay they couldn't afford. We're going to lose 3 days, minimum, she muttered, calculating revised timelines in her head. The tower will wait. Damien appeared beside her with 2 cups of coffee. Still black with 2 sugars. Still exactly right. The foundation is solid. You made sure of that. Victoria accepted the coffee. The fact that he remembered such small details shouldn't have mattered, but it did. I hate delays. Every day we're not building is a day we might miss deadline. We won't miss it. Not with you running this project. Damien was quiet for a moment, watching the rain hammer down. Can I ask you something? Can I stop you? What happened after that morning? After you signed the papers after I had him come. He couldn't finish the sentence. Victoria wrapped both hands around the warm cup. You mean after you had my father drag me out while you watched from your pristine penthouse? He showed up drunk. Of course he did. It was 10 in the morning. He was always drunk by 10. Victoria's voice was flat. He called me a disappointment, just like you did. Said I'd failed at the one thing women like me were good for, keeping a rich husband. Then he tried to negotiate with you for money. Damien's face went ashen. Victoria, security escorted both of us out. I spent that night in a hotel, staring at divorce papers and trying to figure out how my life had collapsed so completely. She turned to look at him directly. Do you know what saved me? What? Rage. Pure, crystallized fury. I was furious at you for throwing me away. Furious at myself for becoming small to fit in your world. Furious at every person who'd ever implied I should be grateful to be Mrs. Damien Cross. Victoria's eyes blazed. So I took that rage and I built something. I designed buildings that made your properties look ordinary. I won clients you wanted. I became the architect everyone called when they wanted something extraordinary. You wanted revenge. I wanted vindication. There's a difference. She sipped her coffee. Revenge would have been sabotaging your projects or spreading rumors. Vindication was proving that you were wrong about me, about my worth, about what I was capable of achieving. You succeeded. You're extraordinary. I know, Victoria said simply. I don't need you to tell me that anymore. I needed to hear it 5 years ago when I was drowning in self-doubt. Now I've built my confidence on my own achievements, not on someone else's validation. Damien was quiet, watching the rain. The deluge had created a curtain that isolated them from the rest of the world. I saw the house you designed for yourself, the one overlooking the harbor. You went to my house? I drove by. I didn't stop or knock or anything creepy like that. I wanted to see what you'd create when you were building for yourself instead of for me. He smiled sadly. It's magnificent, organic and bold and completely unique. Everything that penthouse wasn't. That penthouse was designed for who you wanted me to be. My house was designed for who I actually am. I see that now. Damien turned to face her fully. Victoria, I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not even sure I deserve the chance to ask for it. But I need you to know that calling you good for nothing was the biggest lie I've ever told. You were always extraordinary. I was just too damaged and stupid to handle someone real. Victoria felt something inside her chest. The armor she had built so carefully. It developed a hairline crack. Why now, Damien? Why say all this now? Because watching you work, seeing the passion and brilliance you bring to every decision, I can't stay silent anymore. Because this tower we're building together is going to stand for 100 years. And I need you to know that the man who helped create it sees you clearly. Finally, completely sees you. The rain hammered down, creating a world that contained only the two of them. Victoria looked at this man she had once loved with her entire being. This man who had shattered her and who now stood before her, humbled and honest in ways he had never been during their marriage. You hurt me so badly, she whispered. You made me doubt everything about myself. I know, and I will regret that every day for the rest of my life. Pretty words are easy, Damien. Changing is hard. Then watch me. For the rest of this project, for as long as you'll let me. Watch me prove that I'm not that frightened boy who chose social approval over love. Victoria wanted to walk away, to protect the heart she had worked so hard to rebuild. But she was also an architect, and architects understood that sometimes you had to demolish old foundations before you could build something stronger. 23 days left on this project. You want to prove you've changed? Show me with actions, not words. What kind of actions? Figure it out. You're supposed to be brilliant at solving complex problems. She walked away, leaving Damien standing in the rain-soaked observation area, already planning how to show this extraordinary woman that he had finally become someone worthy of her. Hold on. Before we see how this ends, I need to know. Do you believe people can really change? Or is Victoria setting herself up for heartbreak again? Comment below with your honest take. And if this story is hitting you in the feels, smash that like button and subscribe, because I post stories like this every week. Stories about second chances, redemption, and people who refuse to stay broken. You don't want to miss what happens next. Let's finish this. The days after the monsoon conversation brought a shift in Damien's behavior. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. Every morning at 6 he was there with coffee. But now there was also a pastry from the bakery Victoria had mentioned liking. Small notes with terrible architectural puns that made her smile despite herself. What do you call a tower that's good at math? The edifice of education. Victoria groaned, but she kept the notes. He stayed late every night, not hovering or micromanaging, just making sure she wasn't working alone, making sure she got back to her hotel safely. When she pointed out that Singapore was one of the safest cities in the world, he just shrugged. I'm not leaving until you do. On day 42, there was an investor dinner, the kind of formal event Victoria usually dreaded. Old guard developers who still thought women architects were novelties. Men who directed technical questions to Damien, even though Victoria was the lead designer. She was bracing herself for the usual subtle sexism when one of the investors, a British developer named Whitmore, made a comment. It's refreshing to see a woman in architecture, even if the technical details are usually beyond them. I'm sure Mr. Cross handles the engineering complexities. Before Victoria could respond, Damien set down his glass with enough force to make it ring. Let me be absolutely clear. Every innovation in this tower, every structural solution, every sustainable system, every aesthetic choice exists because of Victoria's genius. I'm a businessman who signs checks. She's an artist who shapes skylines. Don't ever minimize her expertise in my presence again. The table went silent. Whitmore stammered an apology. The rest of the dinner, investors directed their questions to Victoria, respected her answers, treated her as the authority she was. As they left the restaurant, Victoria caught Damien's arm. Thank you for that. I should have done it years ago. Should have shut down every person who ever dismissed you. He met her eyes. I'm done letting anyone, including myself, diminish your brilliance. On day 48, there was a major decision about the lobby design. Damien preferred a more traditional aesthetic, marble and brass in classical proportions. Victoria wanted something bolder, a living wall that would bring nature into the space. Reclaimed wood and recycled materials that told a story of sustainability. They presented both options to the investors. I defer to Victoria. She's the architect. This is her call. Her design was approved. That night, as they reviewed the next day's schedule, Victoria studied him. You really wanted the marble lobby. I wanted what I thought would be safer, more familiar. But you're right more often than I am about these things, and I'm learning to trust your vision even when it scares me. Days 50 through 58 became a blur of final details. Installing the sky gardens, programming the building management systems, coordinating with interior designers and landscapers, testing the sustainable systems to ensure they functioned as designed. And through it all, Damien was there, not controlling, not second-guessing, just supporting, bringing food when she forgot to eat, handling logistics so she could focus on design, running interference with investors when they wanted to make last-minute changes. Victoria found herself watching him, noticing the consistency. These weren't grand gestures designed to win her back. They were daily choices, a pattern of respect and partnership. The man she had married had been performative, always aware of appearances. This Damien was different, quieter, more real, And dangerously, she found herself starting to trust him. Day 59 arrived with the weight of finality. The tower was nearly complete. Standing in what would become the penthouse suite, Victoria and Damien watched sunset paint Singapore in golden amber. The view stretched for miles. The financial district below, the harbor beyond, ships moving like toys on water that reflected the sky. Victoria felt pride swell in her chest. They had done it. Against odds, timeline constraints, and the complicated history between them, they had created something magnificent. The investors want to push up the opening gala to next month. Damien's voice interrupted her reverie. He stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Close enough that 5 years of distance suddenly felt like nothing. That's aggressive but doable. The interior finishes are ahead of schedule, because you've been working 18-hour days. Victoria, you need to rest. You've barely slept in weeks. I'll rest when it's perfect. It's already perfect. You've made sure of that. He turned to face her fully. You've thought of everything. The sustainable systems, the public spaces, even the art installation in the lobby. This building is going to change the city's skyline. We did it together. No, you did it. I just signed checks and stayed out of your way. Damien smiled, but there was sadness in it. Tomorrow is day 60, the end of our agreement. Victoria's chest tightened. She had been so focused on the building that she had avoided thinking about what came after, about returning to separate cities, separate lives, separate worlds. The thought created an ache she didn't want to examine. I suppose it is. I need to tell you something before tomorrow. Before you go back to your life and I go back to mine. Damien, please, let me say this. He took a breath. These 60 days working with you have been the best days of my life. Not because of the tower, but because I got to witness your brilliance every single day. I got to watch you solve impossible problems, inspire workers, negotiate with contractors, create something that will outlive both of us. His voice grew rough, and I realized that being married to you wasn't the mistake. Throwing you away was. Victoria's carefully constructed emotional walls trembled. Every morning, I've brought you coffee. Every evening, I've made sure you ate something. Every time you've worked late, I've stayed later to make sure you got back to your hotel safely. And I've done these things not to impress you or manipulate you, but because taking care of you in these small ways has been an honor. Damien. Her voice cracked. I'm not asking for another chance. I know I don't deserve one, but I needed you to know that the man who called you good for nothing was a coward speaking from his own inadequacy. And the man standing here now would spend the rest of his life proving your worth if you'd let him. Victoria turned back to the window, tears streaming down her face as sunset gilded the city. The sky was on fire with color, oranges and pinks and purples painting clouds in shades that seemed impossible. You really hurt me. I know. I spent years rebuilding myself, years learning to be whole without you. I know. And now you show up, humble and honest, after I've finally healed. She laughed through tears. The timing is terrible. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see you clearly when I had you. I'm sorry I chose comfort over courage. I'm sorry I let you go. Victoria wiped her eyes, smudging concrete dust across her cheek. The dust had become so familiar over these 60 days. A second skin, evidence of the work that had consumed them both. You want to know something ironic? What? I never stopped loving you, even when I hated you, even when I was proving everyone wrong, even when I built an empire. Part of me never stopped loving the man I thought you could be. She turned to face him. And these past 60 days, I've seen glimpses of that man. The one I fell in love with before fear made him cruel. Victoria. Hope flickered in his eyes. But love isn't enough. You taught me that. We need trust, respect, partnership. We need to be equals. We are equals. You're probably the stronger of the two of us. Then prove it. Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts. Prove it by being the man you've been these past 2 months. Consistently, without the deadline of a project forcing us together. Damien closed the distance between them, stopping just inches away. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his hair that hadn't been there 5 years ago. Close enough that she could see the lines around his eyes. Evidence of time past, of lessons learned the hard way. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe, possibly, we could try to build something together. Not a tower this time, something harder, something that requires better foundations. Like what? Like trust, like partnership, like us. Are you sure? I don't want you to give me another chance out of nostalgia or... Victoria placed a finger on his lips, silencing him. I am an architect, Damien. I understand foundations, load-bearing walls, what structures can withstand, and I think maybe we could build something that lasts, if we do it right this time. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, couples counseling, selling my company and moving to wherever you want. I don't need you to sell your company. I need you to see me as an equal partner, not an accessory or a trophy or someone to save. Can you do that? Victoria, I don't want to save you. You're the strongest person I know. I want to learn from you. I want to build a life together where we both thrive. She studied his face, seeing sincerity and vulnerability and the raw honesty she had always craved. The sunset behind them was fading now, the sky shifting from fire to twilight, the city lights beginning to flicker on, marking the transition from day to night, from one phase to the next. Then we start slow, dinner dates, getting to know each other again. No assumptions, no rushing towards something just because we have history. Whatever timeline you need. And Damien, if you ever imply that I'm less than extraordinary, if you ever try to make me small to fit your world, if you ever choose social standing over us, I'm gone. No second chances. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Victoria took a breath and made the leap that terrified and exhilarated her. Then take me to dinner, a real date, not a working meal. Show me you've learned how to be someone worthy of partnership. Damien's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. He looked younger, lighter, like a man who had been carrying weight for years and finally set it down. Tonight, tomorrow, after we finish the final walkthrough, after we complete this project as equals. She extended her hand formally. Partners? He took her hand, but instead of shaking it, he raised it to his lips. Partners, in this tower, in the next project, in whatever we choose to build together. As the sun set over Singapore, painting the Cross Ashford Tower in brilliant shades of possibility, Victoria allowed herself to hope. Not the naive hope of her first marriage, but the cautious, hard-won hope of someone who had been shattered and rebuilt herself stronger. Maybe some foundations could be repaired. Maybe some structures could be reinforced and made more beautiful than before. Maybe two people who had hurt each other could choose, consciously and deliberately, to build something better. She was an architect. She knew that the most beautiful buildings rose from the strongest foundations, built by people who understood both the weight they had to carry and the heights they could reach together. And as Damien stood beside her, watching the city lights flicker to life below their creation, Victoria thought that maybe, just maybe, they could build something that would last. Not because it was easy, but because they had both learned the hard way what it cost to destroy something precious. And neither of them would make that mistake again. 2 years later, the architectural awards ceremony glittered with the industry's most celebrated names. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, the air humming with professional ambition and champagne. But Victoria barely noticed the glamour. She stood backstage, adjusting the design portfolio that contained her latest project, sustainable housing development that would provide affordable homes without sacrificing beauty or dignity. You're going to win, Damien murmured beside her, adjusting his bow tie. In 2 years, they had rebuilt their relationship slowly, carefully, with the attention to detail they both brought to their architecture. They had gone to therapy. They had had difficult conversations about expectations, worth, what partnership actually meant. They had built something new from the ruins of what they had lost. 6 months ago, they had remarried in a small ceremony attended by people who had supported Victoria through her darkest days. No social climbing, no family pressure, just two people choosing each other with clear eyes and full hearts. We don't know that. I know you. I know your work. You're going to win. Victoria smiled at this man who had become her partner in every sense of the word. And the Architecture Excellence Award goes to Victoria Ashford for the Meridian Hope Housing Development. Damien's whoop of joy nearly drowned out the applause. Victoria walked to the stage in a daze, accepting the award, looking out at a room full of people who had once doubted her. The weight of the crystal trophy in her hands felt like vindication made solid. Thank you. This award represents more than professional achievement. It represents what happens when you refuse to accept someone else's assessment of your worth. Her voice rang clear through the ballroom. When I was told I was good for nothing, I chose to prove that judgment wrong. Not for revenge, but for vindication. For every person who's been dismissed, diminished, told they don't measure up, build something anyway. Create something extraordinary. Prove them wrong by becoming exactly who you were meant to be. The room erupted in applause. Standing ovation. Flashbulbs popping. But Victoria only saw Damien in the front row. Tears in his eyes. Pride radiating from every pore. As she left the stage, award in hand, he was waiting. "I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of us for doing the hard work of becoming better. Victoria Ashford, you are the most extraordinary person I've ever known. And I'm grateful every single day that you gave us a second chance." "Victoria Cross," she corrected with a smile. "I took your name back, remember? How could I forget the greatest honor of my life?" As they left the ceremony, walking into the warm Seattle night, Victoria reflected on the journey. From that rain-soaked day when Damien had called her father, to this moment of triumph and partnership, she had been called good for nothing by someone who didn't see her value. She had rebuilt herself from ashes, and she had learned that sometimes, rarely, people could change enough to deserve a second chance. Not because they demanded it, but because they had done the hard work of becoming someone worthy of it. The penthouse on Meridian Heights, that monument to Damien's stupidity, was their home again. But Victoria had redesigned it completely. She had stripped away the cold. Perfection. Created warmth. Life. Reality. A space built on stronger foundations. As they entered that evening, award in hand, Victoria felt peace. The kind that came from building something meant to last. Damien hung up their coats. Made tea the way she liked it. They settled into the living room she had redesigned with deep couches and warm textures and windows that framed the city they had both shaped. "Any regrets?" he asked. "Only one, that it took so long to get here. Maybe we needed those years. Maybe we needed to become these people before we could make this work. Maybe." She leaned against him. "But I'm grateful for every day from now on, even when you're grumpy from being on call for 36 hours. Especially then. I'll love watching you handle exhaustion with the same grace you handle everything else. And when my business trips conflict with school events," they had no children yet, but they were talking about it. Carefully, honestly, making sure they both wanted the same things. "Then business trips get rescheduled. Family comes first now." Victoria smiled, seeing the truth of that commitment in his eyes. "I love you, Damien Cross. I love you too, Dr. Victoria Cross. Thank you for giving me a second chance I didn't deserve. Thank you for becoming someone who did deserve it." The city spread below them, full of buildings they had created together and separately. The Meridian Arts Complex, the Cross Ashford Tower in Singapore, office buildings and residential developments and community centers, each one bearing their mark, their vision, their commitment to creating spaces that served human needs rather than just making architectural statements. Victoria thought about the woman she had been, signing divorce papers in a penthouse that felt like a prison, being dragged out by her alcoholic father while her husband watched with cold satisfaction, spending that night in a cheap hotel, trying to figure out how to survive. That woman would barely recognize her life now, would be amazed by the empire built from rage and vindication, would be shocked that Damien Cross had changed enough to deserve partnership. But that woman had also been strong enough to survive, smart enough to channel fury into creation, brave enough to give second chances when they were earned. Victoria stood and walked to the window. The Seattle skyline glittered, each light representing lives being lived, dreams being pursued, futures being built. Damien joined her, his arm around her waist, a gesture of affection and respect rather than possession. "What are you thinking about? How far we've come, how much we've both changed, how grateful I am that I refuse to stay broken. I'm grateful you refuse to stay broken too. Grateful you built something extraordinary. Grateful you let me witness your journey even when I didn't deserve to. We both deserved better than who we were 5 years ago. The good news is we became better. The best news," he corrected, and they stood there, partners, equals, two people who had destroyed each other and chosen to rebuild, not because it was easy, but because they had finally learned what actually mattered. Not social status, not family approval, not strategic alliances, but genuine connection, mutual respect, the daily choice to build something together. The city lights blurred as Victoria felt tears on her cheeks. Happy tears this time. Tears of gratitude for second chances and hard-won wisdom and the extraordinary life she had created from the ashes of her humiliation. So that's Victoria and Damien's story. From good-for-nothing daughter to award-winning architect. From humiliation to empire. From divorce to partnership built on actual respect. But here's what I really want to know. What would you have done? Would you have given Damien a second chance? Or would you have left him in the rearview mirror while you built your empire alone? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I read every single one, and I love hearing your perspectives. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that you're not defined by who underestimated you, hit that like button. Let the algorithm know that stories with real depth and meaning matter. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their comeback is coming. That person who's been called not good enough or too much or worthless. Send them this story. Let them know that rejection is redirection. And subscribe to Billionaire Love Stories with Mr. Brad for more stories like this. Stories about people who refuse to stay broken. People who build empires from ashes. People who prove that your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. I post new stories every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Remember, the same person who called you worthless might one day need what you built from their rejection. But by then, you'll be too busy building to care. Until next time, keep building, keep rising, and never let anyone make you small. This is Mr. Brad reminding you that your story isn't over. It's just getting started. Now go be extraordinary.